de-escalate. We need to spend money on jobs and schools, not war. I can see why that speech got him killed. I can absolutely see that. I can absolutely see. And that the Yankee and Cowboy War, the fight between the military industrial complex and the Eastern establishment, yeah, that was the speech that got him killed. Um, you know, right? There you go. There you go. Are you into poker, roulette, and casino games? No, I don't. I was brought up to believe that gambling is not something that one should do. It's interesting. I and I wonder about that because I mean, it's like, there's traditionally been a religious prohibition on gambling, right? It's considered immoral by Christians, generally, and Muslims too, right? And Jews too, I think, right? I mean, it's just one of those things you're not supposed to do. And what's interesting is my father is not a particularly religious man. I mean, but I remember he was always the one who talked the strongest against gambling when I was a kid. And my dad would always say that, if you buy lottery tickets, that is such a waste of money. Your chances of winning the lottery are so slim. Instead, you should save your money. And my father, just when I was a kid, was constantly, do not play the lottery. Playing the lottery is a bad thing. And so I was just constantly taught that playing the lottery was not a wise choice about how one should use one's money, and that gambling is not a good thing to do. Then later, I do remember when there was talk of legalizing casino gambling in Ohio. And that's when people started to talk about gambling addiction, which I did not know anything about. But gambling addiction, is a problem that people have. People develop a gambling addiction, that's not from playing the lottery, because you can only play the lottery. Well, I don't know. Maybe you can play it a lot, but the lottery is a little less addictive. But the casino stuff, where people go and they play roulette and they play poker, a lot of people become addicts, right? And the casino industry, they're making millions of dollars. The casino industry is very much centered around trying to get people addictive. They don't put clocks in the room. They control the temperature of the room very carefully to make people want to stay there. And I remember I visited Las Vegas with my parents once when I was a kid. We were going to do something else. We just flew there because the flights were cheap, and just seeing, how they have slot machines everywhere, the lobby of the hotel, in the airport, they had slot machines. And it was just, I remember thinking as a kid, everyone was talking about gambling addiction, why you should not do it. My parents were both saying that one should not gamble. And it was kind of inculcated from the time that I was a child that gambling was not a good thing. It was not a good thing. Now, what's interesting is that later, as an adult, when I went to Iran and I started reading a lot about economics, I realized that the religious prohibition on gambling is very similar to the religious prohibition on lending money. Right? The reason that Christianity, Islam, and Judaism all forbid the lending of money at interest was because when you lend money at interest, all you do is you put up the money and then you get the money back. And that's a lot like gambling, right? You go in and you win the game and you get your money back. And that there was a feeling among religions in general, the Abrahamic faiths generally view money that is created by other money as being cursed, right? I think the Catholic Church, they used to say that money is sterile. The term usury was used. In Islam, they call it ribald. There's a feeling that it is not moral to get money without creating value, right? The feeling is that money is supposed to represent value, right? If you get paid, it's because you did work, you created something useful, and so you're compensated. You put into society and you get back from it. We all know that's not the case, right? And that finance capital, usury, lending money at interest, gambling, these are examples of money that is created, wealth that is created without any value being created. Karl Marx talked about this. He talked about the concept of fictitious capital. Google fictitious capital. Right? That is Something Karl Marx talks about. He says there's all this wealth in capitalist society that in no way benefits the country, right? There's all these houses of finance, all the Wall Street and their derivative rip-off schemes and all that. None of that represents anything real. Nothing's getting built, right? Nothing's getting built. Nothing's getting, it doesn't make the world wealthier in any way, but the people who do it have more of this paper called money. And when you have a situation where money is being created out of nothing, and the more of that kind of stuff, the more fake economy you have, the more that the physical economy is diminished, and the more you have, fictitious capital, as Karl Marx called, dominating the economy, the poorer everybody gets, right? Eventually that leads to a big economic collapse when the money that is produced doesn't represent any actual value or wealth being created. That's a bad situation. So it's much bigger than that, right? It's much bigger than my parents saying, don't play the lottery, don't gamble because you're wasting your money, right? It's much bigger than that. And it's much bigger than people saying, well, gambling addiction destroys people's lives. The casinos are designed to kind of, get you addicted. They're doing everything they can to get you addicted, just like those opioid manufacturers are doing everything they can to get you to, be addicted to painkiller medication. The casinos, they're doing everything they can to make you a gambling addict. Many people are capable of going there and not becoming gambling addicts, but they're doing everything they can to make sure you do. There's that layer to it. Another thing that I've pointed out that ought to be pointed out, right, is that every dying city, right, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Detroit, every dying city, Minneapolis, I think, I don't know, I haven't been to Minneapolis, but every dying or post-industrial city, and this is so sad. It's heartbreaking. This happens, right? It happens. It's a really sad thing, but I've seen this in my lifetime over and over and over again. Detroit is dying, no jobs. So suddenly in Detroit, they have a brilliant idea. Let's build a giant casino in downtown Detroit. We'll legalize gambling because it's not legal in many places. We'll legalize gambling and we'll build at the taxpayer's expense a giant goddamn casino. And then they get the unions. Usually the unions are involved in lobbying for this, right? The unions pay a bunch of their members to go knock on doors and get people to sign petitions because the unions have made a deal with the casino company, right? The unions have made a deal with the casino company that it'll be a union job. And so the Teamsters or the, hotel employees, restaurant employees, or whoever, they get all of their people to knock on doors all over the state. They get gambling legalized. The city usually puts up a bunch of money and pays for the goddamn casino. And then in the middle of Cleveland, in the middle of Pittsburgh, in the middle of Detroit, in the middle of this dying post-industrial American city, they build a fancy, expensive new casino at the taxpayer's expense. The Democratic Party politicians push for it to create jobs. The labor unions are involved in mobilizing to build it because they made a deal where they'll unionize it. And they build this giant casino, and it's supposed to save the economy. It never does. It never fixes the economy. Why? Casinos don't make people richer, my friend. People go to casinos and lose their money. They lose money. That's what you do at casinos. That's why it's so damn profitable. They lose money. And it never works. Never works. It never works. No city has ever been saved by a casino. And city after city falls for this. And honestly, I think it's done. I think they've all tried it by now, right? There's no more cities left. Every city's basically done this. If there's a city they haven't done it in, they'll try it. But it's like, this was a promise. Oh, Cleveland's going to be saved by the casino. No. Detroit's going to be saved by the casino. No. Right? Never happens. Right? Maybe they create a couple hundred jobs at most. But does the city get stronger? No. Does the city's economy get better? No. Because while they may have created a couple hundred union jobs at the casino, that's something, right? Except there's all kinds of people who go to the casino and lose their money, and it never works out. Zachary Brunch says in Danville, Virginia, it's happening right now. Exactly. and this is an instance where I'm in disagreement with the labor bureaucracy, right? For their own self-serving reasons, it'll create more union jobs. They're for it. But honestly, it hurts the working class as a whole. Working class people go to casinos and they lose their money and they get ripped off. And while it might benefit, you might get a few more, maybe 100, 200 union jobs out of it at the most. All the wealth that's drained out of the working class people who go there, it doesn't even out, and the economy gets worse, right? And casinos, when a casino gets wealthier, does the country get wealthier as a result of having a casino? No, right? The casinos, do they provide new value? I mean, no. Casinos, no. I I'm a bit of a Puritan, and if anyone on here gambles and has a good time with their friends, they do a poker table with their buddies on some, I'm not against that. I'm not condemning you, right? And I mean, I enjoy playing internet computer chess, and I'm not condemning you, okay? I'm not against it, right? I'm not against you. But I personally, the way I was brought up was to believe that gambling for money was not something that one should do for a variety of reasons. The ultimate economic impact of casinos is very negative, right? And it fits in with what Marx wrote about fictitious capital, what Christianity, Judaism, and Islam taught about usury and, the sterile acquiring of wealth. I have a very negative view of gambling. I do, right? I just, you know, I have a very negative view of gambling. I do, right? Um, and uh, you know, there's a verse in the Bible that I really liked. It's from Ephesians verse 4:28, and I'll put that in the chat, right? Because it's an example of something in the Bible that if you think about it, it doesn't, it actually is quite radical. When you read it, it sounds like it's just saying stealing is wrong. But actually read what it says here. Right? This is Ephesians 4:28. Right? It says, "Let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor, doing honest work with his own hands, so that he may have something to share with anyone in need." Now, most people will just read that and they'll just say, okay, stealing's bad. Every religion says that, Caleb. What's so special about that? But don't steal. Don't get something for nothing, but labor. Right? It doesn't say exploit people. It doesn't say invest your money on the stock market. Labor. Do honest work with his own hands, meaning don't exploit somebody else. Don't exploit somebody else. Do honest work with his own hands. And why? So that you may have something to share with anyone who is in need. Right? That is Ephesians 4:28. Right? And that verse points to the fact that early Christianity was very, very socialist in its orientation. Right? It's saying far more than just don't steal. Right? That's saying so much more than don't steal. Right? If all the early Christians wanted to tell their believers, right? The letter, the epistle to the Ephesians, don't steal. They wouldn't have just said that. Let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor, doing honest work with his own hands, meaning don't exploit somebody else. Don't make money off of someone else's labor, but do honest work with your own hands and do it so that you can share with anyone who is in need. This is very communist. Those are very communist values that I read in that verse. Let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor, doing honest work with his own hands, so that he may have something to share with anyone in need. That's great. That's great. Sometimes these streams get more religious than some people are comfortable with. I apologize if these streams are more religious than some people are comfortable with. But I felt like I couldn't end this section on gambling without commenting on that, right? human labor produces all wealth. And we want to create a world where no one is in need, and, you know, and there's dignity in working and laboring for what you have.